Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. It is a nice sunny day here in Maple Creek, Saskatchewan, and I am so fortunate to have right with me now Kristen Swan, and she is a business coach. Turned life and spiritual guide devoted to helping people come home to themselves. After years spent guiding entrepreneurs and leaders to build successful businesses, she now uses that same strategic insight to help people build lives that feel deeply aligned with who they are. Kristen's work invites you to explore your deepest truths, question the beliefs you've inherited, and reconnect with the inner wisdom you may have been taught to ignore. She believes that curiosity is one of the most powerful tools we have. I believe that as well. A way to approach our lives with openness, creativity, and compassion. Her approach is honest and deeply human. She doesn't claim to have all the answers, but she offers hard won wisdom, thoughtful questions, and practical tools to help you discover your own. And through her journals, workshops, and guided classes, she helps people uncover their stories, make decisions that feel aligned, and embrace the beautifully imperfect journey of becoming. Her work is rooted in the belief that our pasts do not define us, they inform us. And when we learn to honor where we've been, we create a space to shape where we're going. Her mission is simple yet profound, to help you see that your story is still being written and to give you the courage, clarity, and creativity to write it on purpose. I love this. I love this so much. So thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Angela. And I really appreciate your show too, and just the ability to share in a way that is, authentic and to show up with our whole selves, right? As kind of these messy, wonderful humans that we are.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've been telling people how important their stories are. I think we
Mm.
think that maybe our lives are a little mundane or we don't have anything profound to share. And yet, I think everybody's story is important. And I think that when you withhold your own story, you're really withholding from the rest of the world all these little gems and things that you don't even realize you have.
Right. Well, and as you touched on, I think a lot about story and and we just know for time and beyond, what a powerful tool of learning and connection and really kind of and connection beyond just kind of the day to day, right? I mean, connection with where we've come from, that which is greater than us. I mean, it's story is so powerful and kind of zooming in on the individual. I think a lot about, I tend to put story into three buckets. I think of the stories that we tell ourselves, right? This,
Mhm.
for me, I will just speak for myself, this busy place up here where there's stories going on all the time. And then those stories that I've inherited or acquired, right? And sometimes the stories that I've inherited, I'm not even aware of them, right? I'm thinking that they're actually my own
Right.
until I get curious. That word, that my favorite word and my favorite activity, to get curious. And then, like you touched upon, the stories, I think of that third bucket as the stories that we are willing to share with others, right? The stories that we tell. And I think that that is such an important piece too, because we have the ability to share in a way that um, allows for us to be vulnerable, right? And to really reveal kind of those parts of us that that allow for other people to feel seen as well, right? It's this um I many years ago when on my undergraduate degree I studied fine art, and when I came out of school I thought about being a fine artist, and I I didn't have a lot of confidence about my ability. And one of the things that I didn't have the confidence in was, I feel like, a piece of visual art, and I think it's very much akin to a story. Um, so hang with me here as I describe this, but a piece of visual art is so the reason why we we respond to different pieces of artwork is that we can see part of our own story, so to speak, in that piece of artwork. So I think that the most successful kind of artists are those ones that are able to share deeply from their own sense of being, which then becomes that that invitation to kind of tap into these universal truths, right? That we share and that we only are aware of when other people are willing to kind of step outside of their comfort zone. Because so often, right, that those things that we're feeling, sometimes if we're staying in our head, we're just feeling like we're very alone in those. So I think like visual art, storytelling is again that invitation to allow others to recognize the universal experience of being human.
Yeah. Yeah. How many times have I listened to a story and thought to myself, oh my gosh, that person just put into words exactly what I'm
Right.
feeling, thinking, experiencing, right? And I didn't even know it. It's
Yes.
like you say, it brings it out so that you can really pay attention to it rather than it just floating around in the back of your mind all the
Right.
time. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, gosh, and I, again, for myself, it's like our brains are these such busy places, right? Where we have so many stories going on, and so many of them, especially the ones that can have us feeling less than, right? Or can isolate us, are are most likely stories that, I mean, are places where other people have, they've been through a similar experience, not exactly your experience, but similar.
Yeah.
And so much of our own, again, so much of my own pain or grief has been exacerbated, right, by isolation or a unwillingness to be to share my story.
Yeah. 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 And we hesitate to do that. It's being vulnerable is not easy. It's not easy to just go ahead and we have a lot of parts of us that are shameful or feel guilty.
Yes.
There's
Uh,
been experiences in our past that have made us feel like we are not um, wise enough to speak, or what we have to say isn't important, or it might be just flat out wrong. It's all of those things are mulling around in our minds. So how do you help people with this? Because it seems like, I think we all go through this, and I think it's a continuing thing. It
oh
doesn't seem to
gosh.
ever go away. So how do we
Yes.
manage this?
Well, so just to really highlight this idea that this we are, and you spoke of it as you introduced me, is I do feel like our story is always unfolding, right? I mean, as long as we're here, there's a new page to be
Right.
written, so to speak. So it is, I think, removing that expectation or that idea that, there's a destination. That also implies maybe a sense of completion or perfection. I'm going to just ask us all to take that off the table and just say, this is there probably isn't a destination. I mean, there's destinations that they're along the way, but kind of not the ultimate destination, and that we're not really looking for perfection, right? And so just kind of pushing those aside so that we can, kind of breathe a little bit more easily, right? Because we're not trying to show up perfectly. So I think the way I learn from myself, right? I mean, as much as I learn from others, it really has to, it has to be true to me
Mhm.
before I'm going to suggest that it might be something helpful for someone else. And I think that we mentioned curiosity, and what does that mean? I think that there has to first be that, and this is true for anyone who is purchasing one of my journals or anyone who comes to one of my classes or workshops, or even just, you're saying, gosh, I like this idea of, thinking about my story and how do I cannot instill this in you, but I can encourage you to uncover it, is your curiosity, getting curious about yourself. And this is not about, I like to say that self-discovery is not selfish, right? This
Mhm.
isn't, this is about getting curious in a way that is really saying, I I think that there's value in knowing and honoring who I am in all of my complexities.
Mhm.
So, starting there, then I think some of the ways that that I have found helpful and that I like to suggest when I'm in a group setting too is I have different prompts, right? Because again, going back to story, it is about that. So it's thinking about those stories of your own life. And sometimes prompts can be helpful because the blank page, as we know, is daunting,
Mhm.
right? Or even if I were to say to you, Angela, talk to me about yourself for 5 minutes, you'd be like, well, where do I like,
Yeah.
where do I start? What do you want to know? And so a prompt is always so helpful. And I mean, one of my favorite prompts is both for myself and for others is to think about a friendship that changed you. Um, and and what I love about that prompt is, I mean, sometimes for me, what comes to mind is a long-standing friendship that I've had, someone that I met very early in my life, and kind of how we have grown together, right? I mean, so there's that, and I think the thing about friendship, and maybe in some ways that's different. Well, obviously it's different, but allows for a more fulsome expansion than thinking about a significant other or a spouse or even a parent, is there's not kind of other layers of charge around
Mhm.
that, right? If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thinking about a friendship that has changed you. So I love these friendships of thinking about one that's maybe long term. And then also I love thinking, sometimes what comes to mind when I'm doing this prompt is I'll think about that person who in just a very specific moment was a friend to me,
Mhm.
right? And what that meant in that moment that was changing, was allowed for me to grow in a way or see things differently or simply get through a difficult moment. And what I was going back to when I was saying that the choice of using a friend in this prompt is very intentional as opposed to a significant other or family member is that I think in our friendships there is we are we are drawn to people as friends who and to a certain extent are mirrors of ourselves. So those attributes that we can name about our dearest friends, or even those kind people who end up being a friend in that moment, those attributes, those are actually things that we ourselves have,
Right.
right? And they might get expressed differently, but we have those. Like you are noticing those things because you have them.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's profound. And it's interesting. I was told that many years ago that the people that we meet mirror things that are in us. And I used to think, the people that I met that were people that I didn't like so much, I was like,
I know it's both sides of the coin, right?
I was like, what is that mirroring?
hmm Oh gosh, I have been down that road too because yes, there is truth. As I said, it's both sides of the coin. The things that we notice that kind of you know bring us to some sort of heightened attraction or you know repelling us, right? Those are probably things that are worth paying attention
Yeah.
to and are mirrors in the same way. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And I think, having multiple people come into your life with that same mirror
Yeah.
really, you really want to check that out too and see what's going on there. Um, I really am all about vibrational frequency and how that affects our outside world. And
Yeah.
so there's so many clues all around us about what's happening inside and not so easy to see, um, but they're there.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, we have, and it's probably to a certain extent a survival skill, right? I mean, our blind spots that we have about ourselves. And I love I used to I did a talk several years ago, and it was talking about kind of what I say is blind spots and bright spots, right? That our blind spots actually can be kind of our bright spots too, in a way.
Mhm.
That, and I use the example of someone who might not, who might walk into a room and they're very confident and without inhibition and just kind of insert themselves into conversations that are already having and somebody who does and their blind spot so to speak might be that they're not picking up on the kind of the cues of the group that they're maybe in a more closed conversation, right?
Right.
That they're just like, hey, I see people, I'm gonna go say hi. And their bright spot conversely is the fact that they're probably out there meeting way more new people than I am because I'm walking into that same room, right? And my kind of sense of being is that I look at that group and I'm like, oh, that group they're deep in their discussion. I got to go find, I'm always looking for that one person who's by themselves on the fringe. I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring them into the group, right? I don't dare disturb that other group. But I mean, so we do have these ways that we move through the world that oftentimes are unknown to us,
Yeah.
and that is where being in relationship, there is this wonderful mirroring that happens, and you have to be paying attention, right? I mean, there's
Yes.
plenty of people who go through their day to day and there's zero, right? And zero curiosity,
Hmm.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
but
Yeah. So I think both you and I don't think that the universe is a punishing thing.
oh
Um,
no.
I don't feel that way. I feel like it's very generous.
Yeah.
But you look around, and I think a lot of people right now, especially with everything going on in the world, people are disappointed. They're struggling. They're trying to find the good in a world where it just looks like there's all kinds of chaos and nothing good can come in from any of it. um, how do we keep being inspired, being hopeful in that kind of environment?
Yeah, it does feel the world feels very heavy in this moment. And I do agree with you. I do not subscribe to a universe that is punishing, right? I think, and even to put it in a more kind of traditional religious terms, I don't believe in hell. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think that the only hell is that which we ourselves create, right here in this moment, in this lifetime. Um, and what I have seen, kind of the unexpected, outcome of doing these workshops of discovering your spiritual autobiography, which is one of my workbooks and workshops, is really how the process that you go through to write your spiritual autobiography goes through several points of reflection. And the beauty of reflecting on your life is, and it can even be like last week. I mean, you don't have to be doing a huge cataloging. So, in the process of discovering your spiritual autobiography, there are several reflective exercises. And what happens in reflecting on things past is you realize how many times the way things turned out had nothing to do with how you imagined it to be, and more specifically, the things that you were worried about.
Mm.
Right. And I think that is, there's hope. I mean, there is the evidence that there is so much that we can't imagine, right? I mean, we think of ourselves as having these incredible brains, right? And our brains, they are so incredible, and they're so limited
Mm-hmm.
because we are, in most cases, we're thinking so specifically about what has happened in the past, so something that we already know, and how it played out, right? So we're thinking, oh gosh, that's how it's going to happen again. um and I mean, we may read about stuff, so maybe, or we may see someone else's story, so we may have an inkling that it could play out differently. But again, it's just kind of limited to that which we've exposed ourselves
Mm-hmm.
to or what we've experienced. And you couple that with our negativity bias, right? Where we are so much more inclined to remember the horrible things, um, that we can forget all these moments when something completely unexpected happened in our life.
Right.
And the outcome was so, so amazingly different than what we had imagined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I'm a little curious about digging more into how people get to know or start to remember that about themselves. Because I think if that's what gives us hope and inspiration, then that's something we should be digging into. Um, and really, it's just getting to know yourself better. Um, how do you help people with this? How do you help them? Because I'm talking about sharing your story, right? I'm always talking
Yeah.
about this. Seems like a theme right now for me. It's like I can't stop harping on how you should tell your story.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your work because this is important. This
Yeah,
is
I really think
important.
so. And so, but there's so many people that just don't know where to start. They don't know how to
Yes.
tell their story.
Yes. Okay. So, what I would recommend is, for the simplest way, and I love simple. I'm all about simple. I mean, this is why I create journals. I think a daily practice of sitting with yourself and doing some sort of reflection. And I mean, my journals are designed for, you know, 15 minutes max. I mean,
Right.
if you want to spend more time, then you can do that. But this is not, it is all about getting with yourself. And I do think that, just as I mentioned, just that reflection of the day before and writing it down. I'm a big believer in pen to paper, because I think that there is something really different that happens when you are committing kind of your full self to this activity of journaling with pen to paper, and getting honest with yourself. So I think that the first step to knowing yourself is being willing to sit with yourself honestly and say, you know, this is what happened. I mean, if you're using spaghetti on the wall, then you're saying this is what happened as a non-judgmental observer, right? You're just journaling about the day. We're not doing judgment in there. And then you're picking out the parts where, kind of those bright spots of your day, the big, what I call your yeses. And then you're pulling out the parts that were the, not so bright. I call them the not so muches. And you're allowing yourself to say, this is what the day was like. And these are the little moments that brought a smile to my face or that I brought joy to my heart. And these are the things that, you know, not really. I wish I could have done it differently, or I just really didn't like that, or I'm not sure that I like that person, that guy, and it's just for you. So I think that it's what I'm suggesting is that it's that one honest day at a time. I mean, it's getting honest with yourself with the confidence that what you are sharing is just between you and the page.
Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, and people are going to say, well, I'm honest with myself, I don't need to write it down. And believe me, because I've said that. I mean, I have said that. I've been a journaler all my life, but there's definitely been moments where I'm like, too busy. I don't need that. I don't need to reflect on it. Like, I'm deep in it, right?
Right.
Mm. And there is there is something that we connect with on a different way when we're pausing and writing it and just kind of sitting with it and naming it,
Mhm.
right? The naming of it. That is, and it doesn't have to be it. don't worry about your punctuation. Don't worry about
Mm.
how your penmanship looks, right? I mean, I have horrible writing. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of it. Anyone who does stumble across my journal, good luck to them making out my writing. Um, but the naming of it, because we are, as much as we communicate in a variety of ways that are have nothing to do with words, that is also our primary way of kind of communicating and understanding,
Mhm.
right, as humans.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that naming for yourself.
Yeah. And it seems to me there's a process that happens when you're writing about your day, and then you get into maybe what you were feeling in that moment, or what you liked or what you didn't like. And as you're writing that, there's something that, for me anyways, it started to process. Like, I would start
Hmm.
to think, okay, so why am I feeling that way about that situation, and
Right.
why does this make me so happy? And really, it started to define for me what gave me joy and what didn't. and
Yes.
and it was repeating, right? So there was a pattern that I could follow, and then I could start to understand. Everybody says that family is important and friends are important and connection is important, but until you really take that in, you write it every day and you go, the best part of my day was when I got to play with my grandkids. The best part of my day was when I got to talk to my friend on the phone. The best part of my day was, you start to see
Right.
the pattern. It's the connection with people. Being an introvert and really wanting to be by myself, that was a huge realization that connection was important to me. I didn't think it was.
Yes, and also then, so I love what you are sharing is, and as an introvert myself, that same thing of knowing how much connection means to me. And so recognizing that, kind of was the first step for me as well. And as you go through and you continue to journal, I think there is part of the power of journaling is having a consistent practice, right? And so that you can recognize these patterns. Is then how do I understand what really feeds my soul in terms of connection,
Mhm.
right? Is that I'm recognizing that, you know, doing something where I just have tea with a friend is so kind of soul filling, um, much more so, or in a different way, I'll say, let's say in a different way than having a big birthday party that I attend for a dear friend,
Right.
right? And so, kind of also really naming and getting some awareness around the nuance of who you
Mhm.
are.
Right. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I think it's really important to
Yeah.
understand yourself, and
Yeah.
and thus then you're able to talk to others about that, and you find similarities and more connections that way. So, we're talking about this. How do we?
And well, let me just, in
Oh, yeah,
one
go
more
ahead.
thing, just,
Yes.
I mean, the, you know, the value in self-discovery and being willing to sit with yourself and get to know yourself is not just that you essentially can become more comfortable in your own skin. It also is then that ripple effect. Because, I mean, if you think about the people who are kind of really attractive, so to speak, and I'm not talking about physical appearance, I'm talking about kind of that energetic attractiveness, right? I mean, those, the people that I think are the most attractive to me are those people who are comfortable in their own skin and who feel they're like they are themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so what happens in this process is, you know, uncovering what you're about, kind of living into that more and honoring that, and then bringing that into the world and allowing just others to benefit from that kind of essentially modeling, not in a academic way or
Mm-hmm.
very, precise way, but just modeling that comfort with yourself, which and again, I think about the people that I just find so, magnetic to be around. It's not these people that are perfectly put together or these people that are, I mean, they might be, but it has so little to do with how accomplished they are, how, put together, like I said, or how successful, if you want to use that term. It's really about these people who I just feel like, oh my gosh, they're showing up as themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Very true. And they allow you to be yourself then.
Yes, yes. And I think, and that's the beauty is too, yes, thank you for reminding me is that when you are really comfortable being yourself, you no longer, you're not doing that thing where you're trying to be someone else and you're not trying, there's yeah, that way of being invites others to be more comfortable in themselves, and what a gift that is.
Absolutely. So, one of the questions I have is, there's been lots of times where I can be really angry about something
Mm,
that's happened or something that's happening in the world or hurt. Um, I had a friend of mine gave me this. She said, um, anger gives clarity, rage gives autonomy. And I've really been
mm,
thinking about that because I always thought that, well, I've been brought up that anger is not appropriate. Rage is not something we do, it's not healthy.
yeah, yeah,
um, and and she was talking about honoring yourself in this space and focusing on what needs to be said at the time, because sometimes that anger or rage can come up at a very inappropriate time where you don't want, you know,
like 99% of the time, yes.
yeah. Yeah. And so just like, you know, honoring that that is there, being able to say what needs to be said in a compassionate way or uh, and then being compassionate with yourself in that space and allowing that rage and anger because it actually has purpose. What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
Well, so there's a lot there. I mean, because you also used hurt,
Yeah.
right? You also included that at the beginning when we were talking, and I'm going to first start with anger. Um, for myself, what I have learned over the years is when I am angry or when I am feeling, you know, kind of resentful or, activated in that kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And it can also hurt can be in there too, but I mean, particularly when I'm angry and is I've learned that most of the time I'm angry with myself,
Mm, yeah.
right? I because I have I've kind of broken kind of my own rules, so to speak, my
Right.
own understanding of who I am and how I want to show up in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll use a great example. My dad began dating a woman. My parents are long divorced. I mean, they got divorced when I was 4, and um, my dad, when he moved to take care of my grandparents, started dating this woman, and I spent a lot of time really angry about this woman, and saying this is this person is making my life so difficult, kind of thing, right? And I don't like how this person is, and how can this person do this and do that? And what was so a couple of things I had to realize in that is there this person was being 100% consistent. Like they were they they were just being themselves. They
Mm-hmm.
were just being themselves, right? And what I was really upset about was, and what I had to gain some awareness around, was that I was upset that my dad was I had to I had to realize that my dad was also making a choice to be with this person, right? And there was some complicity in I mean, she wasn't kind of acting on her own. And so I had to I had to get okay with that. And then I had to kind of say, okay, you know, this is this is an important person to my dad, and I want to honor that because he deserves an important person in his life. And um kind of how am I willing to where am I how am I willing to interact with this person that is going to remain true to myself, and so that I can also kind of show up in a way where I don't slip into this resentment and anger, right? And because I think I part of my anger was I kept doing things, I kept kind of trying to create situations to interact with my dad's person in a way that I wanted them to act differently, right? And so I kept like creating, opportunities for this person to show up differently, and all it did was it just made me more resentful. So I had to step back and say, this person is being consistent. Being angry or resentful is not a place that I want to be. Um, and, where do I, how do I kind of navigate where I'm willing to interact with this person or not? And that's not always, I mean, in the case of my dad and his girlfriend, it actually became very hard because there were times when I asked if I could just be with my dad by himself because I just wanted, that time. Um, and I had to be willing to ask for that, right? So that required a degree of, once I got awareness around this, I also had to be willing to ask for that. Um, and most of the time the answer has been no.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I've also had to kind of be okay with that. And then when
Yeah.
I say be okay with that, I have to acknowledge that this is kind of the primary person in my dad's life, and like I said, I I mean, I don't expect my dad just to be at my beck and call, right? I mean, that's not
Mm,
realistic.
right.
And
Yeah.
he deserves, love and happiness. Um, and I can still be sad about that too.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because it's a change, right? And
Yeah.
oh, I feel your emotion
Yeah.
because this is wow, I've never been this. It's so interesting. Um, so I have a new partner, and it's kind of the same situation, right? So how do you, and I can see how everything's changed, right?
Yeah.
So the grief comes in. That's that's the process of grief. There's a change. When you talk about accepting that,
Hmm.
allowing that, and then releasing it, right? Because nothing stays the same. Everything changes.
Well, it does. And I thank you so much. You have this ability to, I mean, this was even in our first email exchange or message exchange. You have such a ability to put into words things that um, I are elusive sometimes for me. And I think the other thing that in your sharing there, which I thank you for sharing so sweetly from your own experiences, is as we accept the grief, I think when we can at some point, I think, and not initially, and I'm reiterating this for myself because I have done a lot of years were spent completely ignoring and
Mm.
batting away,
Yes.
any grief. It was
Yeah.
like, no, 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 I don't have time for you.
Yeah.
That's too scary. I can't fall into a deep dark hole of, misery.
Exactly.
So I just got to soldier on.
Yeah.
Um, and so allowing and accepting that sadness and trusting that you will make it through, right? And that you will actually make it through. Not necessarily, I don't want to kind of rely on cliches of that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It adds this layer of understanding, you know to ourselves and to others, right? It kind of is also this additional layer of compassion that we can bring to the
Yes.
world.
Yes.
And the other thing is how often our grief is really grieving what we not necessarily what we really had. Because if I'm really honest, I mean, my relationship with my dad is pretty intermittent, and has she really taken that much more of his time away than was already, you know, I don't know.
Mm.
Not probably not. Um, so the grief sometimes is kind of grieving what you thought could be or what you
Yeah.
wanted there to be. And 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 then kind of the next level is to recognize, what the situation is, really has
Mhm.
been.
Right.
And I think I realized that deeply, with my first divorce, because a divorce especially is kind of just this death of this dream, this image that you had for your life,
Yeah.
right? And So much of my grief around my divorce, both my divorces, was what I had really hoped would be. And um, yeah, and the reality was is I didn't have it, and I probably wasn't building the foundation to get to where I thought I was going to be.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's that acknowledgement of it. It seems to me, like you said, you were pushing it away, pushing it away. And that's what we do. And because the acknowledgement is painful, it's
Yeah.
like really recognizing that the past can't be changed, that the future can't be changed. The only thing we have is what we have right now in this moment. That's all we have control over. And it's really hard because we think that we can change the future, right?
Yes. Well, and we can. I mean, I think
To a point.
that
Yeah.
to a point, we can make choices that are when we are operating, when we are really, when we have taken the time to get to know ourselves and to trust ourselves, right? Because I think about the other grief in particularly in my marriages that ended in divorce is how I ignored all the information that was right in front of me because I was afraid. I was afraid to be alone. I was afraid to be unlovable. I was afraid to kind of just understand who I was. I was afraid that I, would just be this person who was dismissed,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
yet I was willing to dismiss myself
Right.
to kind of
Yeah.
wedge myself into this being that would be the the perfect fit for this other
Right.
person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's so profound. And to me, that whole process of grief that we push away is really the one thing that can help us heal and get to a
Yeah.
place of joy again and fulfillment again. It's like really embracing that process and allowing it to take us to this new place. Um,
Yeah.
and you know I realize more and more I have less control of, and I don't want control is the other thing, because so much more, I think we were talking about this earlier, like if I put in a box what I think something should be, it could be so much more, to just
Right.
allow that creativity and allow that um, curiosity that you were talking about, to attract that different energy and to see that in my outside world. Um, I'm learning more and more to let those things go that I can't control and to allow good things to come from that.
Oh
Um,
my gosh, right? And oh, I so agree with you. And I think that in fact, I was thinking about that this morning is it was funny. We celebrated Easter this past weekend, and so I had put together all of us were going to go out. Nobody felt like hosting. I don't think anyone felt like doing the grocery shopping or the dishes or
yeah.
whatever. So we met someplace, and there was kind of this last minute juggle of text messages like so and so is going to be late and so is not coming because they, whatever. And I love that I'm in this place now where essentially, and this was not always, I mean, in the past, I would have been like, there would have been so much that I would have been trying to control. And there also would have been a little bit of like, oh my gosh, how could they, they should have realized that that they were going to run late, or they should have realized that they had
Right.
work that day or whatever. And instead, I'm at this place where what I can control is I realized that I didn't want to host, 15 people.
Hmm.
I realized that I could pick this place that I love and know is going to be comfortable for me, and it's going to be it's going to be a pleasant experience for others. I mean, it's up to them how pleasant it is, but and I essentially can kind of set the table, and then at this point where I am now, it's like the people who are meant to show up are going to show up,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know? And I'm going to show up, you know, the way that I want to show up, and what so there's some choices that I can make, but then I also, there's, like you said, there's just this beauty in the letting go, and the just beautiful couple of hours that we got
Hmm.
to spend together.
Right. Yeah. 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 I love that because, yeah, we all make plans. I mean, I did kind of the opposite. I had, I had his kids, my kids. We had like a whole weekend event, and
Yes.
it was amazing. It's totally amazing. And yet there was times where it was like, well, my kids weren't there yet, and things didn't quite snap into place just exactly how we saw them, and there's that little bit of resistance and push pull,
Right.
but it was like it all happened perfectly. When you look
Yeah.
back on it, it was perfect the way it was. And so, yeah, there is that letting go, and as soon as you can let go of that outcome, other than the fact that you're going to have this connection and this beautiful experience, then yeah, it allows for you to actually enjoy it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to be kind of more present in your own life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, one thing I learned this weekend, like the littles are the most important. And so,
Yes.
whatever the littles need.
Yep. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's so true
Oh.
and so, you know, beautiful in that way. So,
Well, it is so beautiful, and it's actually such a wonderful I think about there's just such a purity in the kind of the asks and needs, right, and wants of the littles, right?
yes.
That is such a great reminder of to all of us. And it is, I mean, on a darker note, I remember when 9/11 happened, and I was on the West Coast, and the kid's dad was off on a he was kind of unreachable, and we were still married at the time, and my grandmother had spent the night with me, so we were home, and I never had the TV on in the morning, and I was actually waiting for a workman to show up, and and I needed to get the kids to school, and it was just this. And so I finally called him and I said, I'm going to need to leave shortly. Are you still planning on coming over? And he said, well, I'm watching airplanes crash into the World Trade Center.
Oh,
And
wow.
I thought that was kind of, at first I thought it was, I mean, when he first said it, it was so improbable, right? So I was like, yeah, you're joking, right? And he said, no, I'm not. And clearly his tone was very serious. And so I did turn on the news. And as anyone who has seen that footage, is just horrible. And so scary and so and completely upends your feeling of safety, right? And
Hmm.
kind of the world as it's supposed to be. And and I saw that. I turned off the TV and walked back out to the kitchen where my grandmother was helping the kids finish breakfast, and they're kind of like they have no idea what's going on, and it's like, well, what are we doing? Aren't we supposed to go to school? What's happening? You know, I guess what I'm trying to say is they just kept they just were living,
Hmm.
and I was kind of grateful because I began addressing their needs and being in that moment of caring for what they needed. And it again kind of puts in perspective of just what deserves your attention. I mean, not that that doesn't, but
Hmm.
what you can really do in any given moment and
Yeah.
kind of where what deserves your attention. And children are such a beautiful way to kind of cut through all of our adult concerns and
Yeah.
worries that we layer on and can really become these can obscure our view of kind of what's the essence of our life.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I know that like, that whole attention that you're talking about, the attention to what you should put your attention to in that moment, when you can't control anything else, what can you put your attention to? And it's like that service to others. And that, you
Yeah,
know, those littles, like you say, they're the ones that remind us how important it is to look after ourselves and others, um, in a way that's really the kindness, the compassion that the world needs.
right.
Dwelling on what happened really doesn't change anything. It creates more fear and really frustration, and it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this has been an amazing conversation, and we've been just, the time's just flying by.
I know.
I want people to be able to find you so that they can work with you to um, tell their story, learn how
Yeah,
to put it into words.
for sure. Well, I have a website, kristenswan.com, and that's a great place to get to know more about my work in detail. And I will also make sure that you have a link in your show notes for your listeners to grab a free tool that I have created
Cool.
that might be a good starting point for folks.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
for
Yeah, and
sure.
I encourage people to check out all of your website and everything. Is there anything else
Yes.
you'd like to add before we go?
Oh, I just would say that, you know, we we have so much wisdom and we have so much kind of beautiful complexities within us that I do think that self-discovery, self-reflection is you will find that you actually really like yourself. I mean,
Mm.
that you can, there's so much joy to getting to know who you are and you're worth it. You
Yeah,
really are.
beautiful. I love that. Thank you again for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much.
And thanks everyone for listening, and bye for now.